Welcome to this episode of the podcast where we have a multiple podcast guest coming back for another one, Mr. Austin Curran. Austin, how are you, my friend?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right.
Good, good. And this time around, we are here to talk about basically, in a very condensed version, how Austin got to where he is right now, all of the ups and downs and the trials and tribulations, and how content and social media and marketing all fits into that. Because I think it's good for online coaches to hear the stories of other people like Austin, who's got the old best-selling book out there, and he's flying high as the published author. That
Yeah.
perhaps it didn't all happen overnight, and it wasn't all a click of the fingers, and lo and behold, I've got this wonderful business before me. So we're going to delve into lots of that stuff. So we're going to skip over the whole background of who you are, because I'm going to hazard a guess everybody knows who you are, especially if they're listening to this podcast, because you've been on it a few times already. So I'm going to wind back to the beginning. So what made you want to be, first of all, a coach in general? And also then what kind of was the impetus for you to then push that into online coaching, if you can cast your mind back that far?
Oh, absolutely. So I fall into most things that I'm doing. Um, as Zoe Deschanel in New Girl says, I live where my stuff lives.
Mhm.
I just go where I go. So
Mhm.
originally I started coaching and I became a personal trainer because I was working at a gym. I started working at a gym in high school. I worked at that gym into college and through university. And the only way to get a raise was to become a personal trainer, to get away from the desk and stop cleaning toilets and mopping floors and spraying out the sauna when kids would pee in it. So the only way to get out of that essentially was to be a trainer. And even, I mean, looking back now, that's such a atrocious wage of what that was, but it was better, right? It was better. It was more
Mhm.
flexible. I could work less hours and make at least the same amount of money. And when you're in university, that was huge for me. And so I did that. I started training clients in person. That was in 2013, 2014. That's when I was doing most of that. And then in 2015, I, 2012 kind of kicked off the earliest days of online coaching. And so by 2015, it was a little bit more known that online coaching exists, but still very,
Mhm.
very small audience there of understanding. Like if you mentioned that you could train people online to 10 people, you'd probably get 10 say like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. What's that like
Mhm.
at that in 2015? And so, but I was still in university. I was looking for a way to stop leaving campus because I went to a commuter college. The gym I worked at had 4 or 5 different locations, and then I worked at different ones. And sometimes I'd have to drive an hour just to go work, and then I'd have to somehow find my way back to campus. Or it just took me away from my ability to study and finish my
Mhm.
degree with good academic rigor. And so my goal is to basically just be able to stay on campus. And so I was like, how can I leverage my Instagram at this point? And I started posting content on YouTube, mainly just for the sake of other people were doing it.
Mhm.
And I started to communicate with those people, some of those people that were making videos that were a little bit more popular. One coming to mind is like the online coach. So Raymond, who's been on YouTube for ever, he was one, and then a few others that were doing it a little bit bigger. And then I started making YouTube content and put myself out there. And some of those videos are very, very hard to watch. I'd say all of them are hard to watch for me, but I'd say for most, they're probably hard to watch in the early days. But I was doing it, I was engaging with it, and I was putting
Yeah.
myself out there. And that was met with people subscribing. That was met with people, starting to buy some training programs that I was writing. It turned into people asking about coaching. I also at this time had a competing career.
Hmm.
which helped. So I was leveraging
Sure.
all of that. So in 2014, I earned my IFBB Pro card. And so I was at least respected and looked like I lifted, and
Hmm.
I had a nice physique and that presented well through the visual platforms of Instagram and YouTube. And so I really just leveraged my physique in a big way, that I don't really do anymore. I kind of switched gears there. But if you look at my old content, I really leveraged the way that I looked. And then I was at university studying this stuff. So I was trying to combine all of that stuff
Hmm.
and turn it into something that could be profitable enough to help me pay my rent and buy my food. And my sole goal was, if I can pay my rent, buy my food, and buy supplements that I want and just go to class and train, I'll be the happiest person on earth.
Hmm.
And so it basically got to that point. I got to that point through university of like, I can at least pay my rent. I can at least buy some supplements that I need. Um, I can go to the gym. I can stay in class longer. I could stay on campus longer and get, study longer. And that was the kind of the
Mm.
beginning stages of why I got into personal training and then online coaching specifically.
So when you decided to like start posting content, and like, what was the thought process of what you wanted to post and where you were going to post it? Because, like you say, back in 2012, I can't remember the exact day Instagram became a thing, but it's somewhere
Yeah.
in the 2012 to 2020, 2015, maybe somewhere in that range. So, what Instagram looks like now probably didn't even exist at all back then. So were you just kind of just following, like you said, those people who you saw on YouTube and kind of like doing the same thing, or did you have like a specific thing in your head that I'm going to share this type of content and I'm going to do this, or was it just I'm just going to throw out a few videos and see what happens?
Yeah, you emulate others until you've kind of find your own voice, right? And I know you
Mhm.
talk a lot about that, in your courses and education and stuff. And so on YouTube, yeah, I was just doing what other people were doing. I was filming workouts, talking through them. This is why I'm doing this exercise. I have this competition coming up. I would do, a lot of different like prep series because I was always prepping for a show of some kind or doing a photo shoot for a supplement company or whatever I was doing back in that day. It was just, I was
Mhm.
always kind of preparing for something physically. And so it was a lot of vlogs and training vlogs. And I started doing how-to tutorials back in 2015. So you can kind of see you can see the genesis of that. You can see that start to take shape,
Mhm.
and how I really started to shape my own career as far as what I would be more known for professionally,
Mm.
which I would say, if you know who I am to any degree, or if you don't, you've probably sent one of my how-to tutorials to your clients,
Sure.
probably, at
Yeah.
least one, right? So that's kind of that was the genesis of that. And so the training vlogs really kind of started things out because I didn't know what else to do. And then I would say I got more into the how-to tutorials because that's exercise technique has been a part of my lifting since I was 12, since I started lifting. I was surrounded by people who really took that stuff seriously. I was surrounded by very overqualified people in my strength conditioning programs growing up, um, who now run Division I strength programs
Mhm.
today. Like those were the people I was surrounded by. And then I started working for people like N1 Education and,
Mm.
all these people that talk about exercise technique all day. So it's like
Mhm.
I've never not been around exercise technique. And so the how-to tutorials were big. Instagram was just, here's a photo of me in shape and here's my workout and
Did you actually
here's some food.
enjoy the process of making content back then? I mean, I was not saying you don't enjoy it now, but when it was new, and I guess like the way I see it, I mean, I wasn't posting content when Instagram first started. I had a quote unquote real job. Um, so was it a case of you could kind of just post whatever you wanted and you enjoyed that? And I get the feeling right now there's so many rules. It's kind of the platforms develop so much, there's so much more to know. Whereas I imagine when Instagram first came out, it was just like do whatever you want and it'll probably do well. There's no all these like detailed things you need to know about algorithms and ways to create videos and stuff like that. Did you enjoy creating content more back then or less back
Yeah,
then, or
more back then for sure.
the
I don't
glory
like
days?
rules. Yeah, I don't really like rules. They feel, as rules are, they confine you into to doing certain things or thinking certain ways. Um, and I do think it's something I have to actively work against is the confines of the current landscape of social media really blunting my creative mind a lot.
Mhm.
And that's something that in the early days of doing YouTube and Instagram and stuff didn't happen as much because there were no rules. It was like people were just excited, honestly, that you were deciding to film workouts and do a voiceover or film workouts and actually talk through it with a mic. And, you have like a Rogue shotgun mic on the top of your camera. And it's like, that was it,
Mhm.
or you're kind of like vlogging on some type of handheld camera or something and point and shoot. And people were stoked about that. And they didn't need all this other stuff. And I think in a big way, I mean, I obviously like Sam Sulek, you see his content explode on YouTube for just raw training blogs. I think a lot of people just don't want the flash to
Sure.
that we've kind of gotten to and following all these rules and algorithms and
And
very
so, like,
fast and stuff.
so how then do you like skip forward to like now, present day?
Yeah.
How do you kind of try to approach content so that it's obviously giving something to your audience, and you have to do that in a certain way that Instagram's going to actually show it to someone. Plus,
Yeah.
you also need to be excited by that content. Like, you don't want to,
Yeah.
I mean, I know you, and you don't want to post content that you detest or hate, or, you know, makes you cringe every time you look at it. You want to post something that you enjoy, your audience
Mm.
enjoys, but Instagram's not going to just throw in the algorithmic trash. So how do you kind of like approach content now to try and bridge all of those gaps?
I've been a little confused, to be honest. And, when my Instagram really took off in 2017, I started, and this is all kind of getting to the idea of how you package things does matter,
Mhm.
obviously. But I also think as a communicator of this information, it is your job to package it in a pleasing way that people do want to engage with and to watch. Because would you want to watch it? Like if it's
Mm,
boring and ugly and
for
it
sure.
does goes nowhere and it's like,
Mhm.
what am I watching? You know? So you have to answer that question. Like, would you want to watch your own stuff? And then, and would you learn something if you watched your own stuff? And so, but like the execution series that kind of took things off for my Instagram in 2017, it was, a lot of the early, it was like the early days of X and check and like this is the right way and wrong way to do something. These are the things to look out for if your form looks like this, X, Y, and Z. I was kind of really on the front end of all of that entire trend, which worked out for me. But I first started posting. I actually have a screenshot of this, but it's also posted on my Instagram. Sometime in early 2016 or sometime in 2016, I actually started posting videos that were like
Mhm.
that were teaching you how to perform an exercise in a shorter video format without me really talking. It was kind of just me doing it and then showing you how you can mess it up. That was like early 2016, I believe. But it wasn't until February or March, I believe March of 2017, until that content packaged differently took off.
Mm.
Right. And so that idea, the inception of that idea took a lot of time to marinate. And I mean, we're talking the difference of 3 or 4 thousand views per video in 2016 to I have videos in 2017 that, I mean, an average video is 50 to 100K. I had videos that hit millions of views in 2017. Like the difference there in packaging and how I posted that stuff and all of that and just filmed it differently, like all of that stuff mattered. Um, and then 2017 also, that was kind of like more chronological algorithms, which was helpful because you could just
Mhm.
post and post and post and people would see your shit. Um, but now kind of getting to the point of all of that is, packaging does matter. And I do think that one thing that helps me out is I kind of just have my camera rolling. If it's a video,
Hmm.
I'll just kind of have it rolling and I'll just kind of work out and I'll kind of just do my thing. And whenever it feels natural to start talking, I just start talking.
Hmm.
So I'm already mic'd up, I'm already filming it. I really try and take out that awkward beginning stage of like, well, how do I open it? What if I mess up the first line? Like I keep messing it up. Now it's awkward. I've spent 30 minutes trying to do the intro. And that stuff happens. Like, especially if you're early on in this journey and you haven't done much, talking in front of a camera, like, and you're trying to be perfect with it, you're gonna mess it up. So honestly, it's just realizing that for me at this stage with kind of the current landscape, it's if I'm going to make a video about kind of an exercise or a concept within lifting, I just kind of turn the camera on and then I just go about my whatever I'm doing. And then if whenever it feels natural to start talking, I'll start talking.
Mm.
And that's helped a lot. And then also remembering another component to that is remembering that you're also going to chop this thing up. Like you're going to edit this thing. So
Yeah.
understand is you only need parts of that certain parts of that video to go really well, and other parts you can kind of like dude, if you saw the unedited version of many of my videos, it's hilarious because I'm like talking to myself. I'm like, I'm like, I'm saying mean things to myself because I messed something up, or I'm like, I'm I'll talk to my wife upstairs. Like, I just have a bunch of like random,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
gray area in there. But at the end, you see the end product and you're like, that looks like a coherent video that he just like one
Looks like you
took.
planned it.
Yeah, and it's like not really. Just you kind of just
Yeah,
edit it together and try and capture enough things to where you can put something together that's
yeah.
helpful.
I like that because this one of the things that I guess a lot of coaches who, like you say, is that talking on camera is not what people signed up for when they became a coach.
Yeah.
They signed up for coaching people and helping people do training things and nutrition things. And I like the idea of basically turning off that kind of action go type of
Yeah.
thing and just kind of just say, okay, just switch this thing on, see what happens. If I feel like chatting to the camera right now, then I'll do it. It's takes the pressure off. And I think that's a lot of the advice that I end up giving people is they might see me or somebody else do content a certain way and think that that's how they have to do it. And the advice I end up giving is different variations of how can you actually take the pressure off of recording something and just say what you want to say, post what you want to post, and just get it out there. I think that's a nice little way of doing it. Obviously, you've got a home gym though, right? So you know
Now I do. Now
having
I do. Haven't always, but now I do.
having just continuous footage of you in the commercial gym is probably a bit more challenging, but
It is, and that's a different beast altogether, right? And it's even different now because when I first started filming content at a gym, one, I had to be very specific at what gym I was filming at, and I always tried to check with people that worked there. I tried to check with people who were working out at that time, but I still definitely had people at that back in 2014, 2015, who were just like, bro, please stop doing that. Like, please stop filming. You're so annoying. And honestly, like I, whether it was in person people who didn't like it, and obviously, like if they didn't like it and I wasn't there, I'm a person that's like, I'm more scared of you than you are of me. Like, I don't want to mess your workout up. I don't want you to not like me. Like, I don't want to make an enemy out of you. So trust me, like, I'm not like, oh, well, get over it, bro. It's not your gym. Like, no, like I'm so sorry. If am I in your way at all? Like, I'll shut down my business today if this is inconvenience to you. Like, I'll just stop.
I
I'll
got
go
beat
get a job.
myself in the car park.
Yeah, like I'll run away. I'll leave home. So, that's very much my personality. And, there's a lot of pros and cons to that. But as far as there are downsides, but as far as like my demeanor in the gym has always been that. And so even back then it was tough, but now in like this, what I would say the tripod economy is very tough in a gym because you are probably one of 10 at any moment that have a tripod out and are probably in someone's way. And I got really wigged out about it for several years. And I mean, you can see this really big dark space in my content where the lights just kind of got turned off on me filming anything because I got really in my head about, I think it's just getting older and maturing and better understanding these things. But like I got really in my head about like not messing up someone's time to their self by me being selfish filming in a public gym, because like they've probably been waiting all day for this time just to have to themselves, whether they have kids or a job they don't like, or they're in there because just they know they need to be there, but they don't want to be there. And the fact that I'm filming and I'm inconvenient to them is making their experience even worse, which makes them not want to come. So like, I never want to be the reason someone doesn't come to the gym, right? I want to be the reason someone does come to the gym. So, and that's a big part of kind of the root of content. It's like, how can I make the gym more accessible for you? And if that was always been my goal with how-to content or exercise tutorials, it's like, I think a big part of me not trying things is not knowing how to do them and looking stupid, right? And so can I help you not feel as stupid when you're trying it out? Great, if I can help that. So if I can show you how to set up and what you're doing and how it should feel and things you should avoid, then you're on your way to looking like you know what the hell you're doing. Even if you don't. So that was a big part. And the last thing I wanted to mention there, to add on to the kind of just let the camera roll. And obviously at a home gym, I have a luxury of that. So, but I think the concept sticks regardless of where you're filming. So if you're filming at home, just turn the camera on and just start talking about the thing, and you're going to find your voice within that, and you're going to find what you wanted to say. It's like a conversation. Like,
I mean, like before I was kind of more in tune with how to say what I want to say in a concise way. What I used to do was use Instagram lives to flesh out what my point was, because I often found for me that if I had a subject that I wanted to talk about, if I went live and just started talking about it, then I would stumble across, that was a good way of putting that. Now, or the way I explained that, actually, that's what I should make the reel about, or that's what I should make the video about. And then once I'd finished that Instagram live, then I'd go re-record the video based on what I just said, because like it's almost a similar sort of thing, just allowing that just free flowing conversation, even if it's just a monologue, you end up stumbling across the right words, or the words that feel natural. Because I think that's the other thing, is it's a one thing to write down a script and it sound good on paper, but then when you come to say it, that's like, that don't sound like me. That's like someone's tried to make some sort of marketing style video that doesn't sound like me. Whereas the way to sound like you is to just talk and then take the essence of that. And then if you don't even have to re-record it, if you don't want to, you just take from recording this podcast, we could chop out chunks and that would be the point we could make. We don't need to re-record it again. And I think that free flowing nature is a really good way to approach it. I had one question. You basically said somewhere in that answer that you don't want to be people's enemy. You don't want to kind of mess up people's workout and stuff like that. So I had a question about not necessarily enemies, but negativity online. So you work in an industry, and I kind of come from there as well, where opinions, negativity, tribalism is rife. And it's very interesting for me to be on both sides of that fence. So having been an online coach, I've experienced that kind of like, I'm right, you're wrong, this is my opinion, and there could be no other possible opinion that could be somewhat right. Whereas like in a marketing thing, I barely get a comment about someone trying to be really negative towards something that I've said. It just doesn't seem to be one of those topics that people really want to battle about. Whereas I guess like everybody eats, so someone's got an opinion on nutrition, whereas not everybody does marketing, so not everyone's got an opinion. And I think I read a book. I can't remember which book it is. It's either The Shallows or something like that. But basically, they done an interview with a guy who was one of the head programmers at YouTube, who basically programmed algorithms and stuff like that. And he basically said, is the YouTube algorithm, and probably every other algorithm related to social media, is actually designed to make you more angry. It's designed to show you more and more progressively negative videos as you progress through. And if you watch how the algorithm suggests the next one, whether it's the title is slightly negative or it'll push you down that negative route, because people tend to react to stuff that is negative. Like if I disagree with this, I'm going to watch this, or I'm going to have an opinion on it. So it seems to be like social media is pushing people down that we need to basically have these wars online. So how do you, when you're creating content, straddle the line between having an opinion and saying what you believe to be true about a certain topic, and then steering clear of the sort of quote unquote debate, which is not really a debate, is it? But I know you're the type of guy who's not going to say, you know what, I'm going to just stir up some controversy here and throw this post out there. So how do you kind of ride that line between everybody wants to go to war, but you just want to give some solid information?
Yeah, I think you have to answer, what did we go into war for first? And so I'm quite passionate about this subject, actually. One thing I've posted every single year around the same time of year, I always post it in January, early January. Since 2018, I think was the first year I posted it, but I've posted it every year since, and I always have the conversation with my audience about it. And that is the concept of education is greater than belittlement. I don't like belittlement as an education tool. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's the wrong approach. And I don't think it's necessary to get your point across. I think what you're doing is just taking unnecessary shots at someone who's also trying to help other people be better people. And obviously there's charlatans. Obviously there's people who are exploiting people, like, but just like in politics, like, that's not the majority. Like, what we're fighting the good fight against, is the smallest minority of people who seem like the largest majority. And that's the same thing that's happening in the fitness space. And, you have there's like three main villains who exist right now, right? In especially the nutrition space. Everyone's going after them, whether it's Dave Asprey, Don Saladino, or not, maybe is that Don Saladino?
Paul.
The guy who's Paul. Don he's a trainer. Sorry, Don. I don't even think your last name's Saladino, but Paul Saladino.
Throw hate at Don now.
Yeah, I know. Don't throw hate at Don. He's a good dude. And then, the Abu guy, who's Eddie Abu, right? So those are the three villains currently, right? And we've just deployed all forces on those three villains. They're acts of war against society and all of that, right? And so we've just deployed all forces against these three people, which, again, like, I don't think their content is helpful to people. But at the end of it, like, people are smart, I think, and they can sparse out a lot of the nonsense for themselves. But I think if left alone, that content would go away if we also all didn't react to it every day, all day, and then stir up more content. Like, I think we're a bigger problem in that regard. Like, if we just shifted away from focusing on those three individuals would be seen for who they are. And that's someone who's trying to sell you something, and people with their shirt off in grocery stores. Like, that's not acceptable human behavior, one. And it's dumb. And I think people would sparse that out. And again, like, I think moving more towards the positive of, like, not perpetuating that message and not stirring up more controversy all the time would allow that allow that to kind of subside and go away in a big way. And I think those people would have to shift, right? One of their biggest pieces of success is the fact that not only are they in every one of their videos, they're in almost every one of other people's videos. So obviously they're just, you know, what is that? All
triple,
news,
quadruple the exposure.
Yeah. So now everyone knows who these people are, and they've probably followed them to see what the hype is about. And then who knows from there, right? And so as far as staying away from it, I think you got to lead with like, what's the bigger picture, right? What are we fighting? What's the war we're fighting? And for me, like, my big picture is people need to strength train. People need to exercise more. People need to better understand the basics of what's going on so they can feel more empowered in what they're doing, right? Because if you get on social media, you'd think, well, the world is just filled with a bunch of people that just know what's going on and are trying to optimize for the best possible solution. When in reality, most of the world is very lost on any of the decisions they should make day to day. And they're very discouraged to go to the gym. They're very discouraged and apathetic towards themselves to exercise. And that's the reality of what's happening in the world. And I think the longer you spend on social, the less clear that becomes, right? So one of my things is like, you need to spend time in the real world, right? There's a reason I still train people in person. There's a reason we travel. There's a reason we get out into the world, engage with real actual people, have conversations with some of the best conversations I've had about nutrition recently have been with my neighbor who's in her 60s, or she's in her 60s. And like you were saying, back to things just sort of come out in conversation and they're said in a way where you're like, oh, I've never said it like that before. I've never been forced to think about it like that before. Some of my best ideas and concepts that really got through to her, I had never said before until we had that conversation a month ago. And she's like, wow, like that is so helpful. Like I've never thought about any of those things. Like that makes so much sense. And those are things I had also never said, but I understood them, but I'd never needed to say them in that way. Right. Because I'd never been asked in that way. And so I think understanding that the world as a whole needs our help, fighting about whether we should eat plants or not likely isn't helpful to the bigger picture of that, right? There's no negative side to eating plants. So eat plants, eat some protein, eat some fruit, make it basic, and teach that to people who need it, right? Like, let's stop arguing ad nauseum about who's right and who's wrong, because it doesn't matter. What matters is that we're being helpful to those who need it most, right? And I think that is what we have backwards at the moment. And we're fighting a war against ourselves rather than fighting a war against the thing that's actually killing people every single day.
Yeah, for sure. And I 100% agree. And I think you've got like two different styles or two different, let's call them wars going on. You got the ones where, like you say, you got the villains at the moment, and they change as frequently as they come, they go. And like you say, if more people just said nothing, then and didn't give them airtime, they would disappear, and we wouldn't have, years of content trying to backpedal on what they're saying and stuff like that. The other part of having that conversation is, I guess we're probably in the same camp. I haven't got the energy to have those conversations on a continuous to deal with their fans coming in my comments to tell me why I'm wrong. It's like people, like, all hats off to people like Layne Norton who kind of lead the charge on all of that. Like, dude, if you've got
he's built energy for it, though.
If you've
got
his
personality.
If you've got the energy to manage all of that, then good luck to you. I certainly haven't. And then I guess the other side of that is the wars, the pointless wars that people go to between people who are all on the same, ostensibly on the same side. Like they would argue about the intricacies of some sort of biomechanics thing or an exercise thing, or which thing is best, or which is the best exercise for this. No, you're wrong because of this and this and this. Like literally the average person just does not care, or does not even need to know that there is even the potential for a debate about that minute topic. Yes, maybe at a very intellectual level that then over years trickles down and, influences the way that we approach certain things. Great. But as mass produced content, it just feels to be like really missing the point for the vast majority of people that are consuming content on social media. And again, like wasting your effort having that conversation is a complete waste of time that you could have been doing something else. And it was funny, like I wrote an email literally today. Oh, I actually wrote it yesterday, but it went out today. And it was about, often coaches will kind of say, well, I feel like I've said that a million times. I keep saying the same thing. Like everybody knows about calories, right? So what's the point? Keep saying, right? And it was literally a reminder to say, look, the average person doesn't know as much as you think that they know. Because I was in a coffee shop, 2 seats in front of me with 3 women having a conversation. And we're in this coffee shop called the Brownie Addict. So it's full of like nice cakes and treats and stuff like that. So she was saying that she posted a picture of a cupcake that she had last week on Instagram. She clearly, from me channeling into a conversation, she was going through some sort of weight loss thing and posting her progress. And she got a lot of hate on her post saying calorie deficit my ass, which is a kind of a very English way of saying it. You need to eat half the calories, look at you, and all these sorts of things. I felt quite sorry for her that she has to deal with that just because she wanted to post her own journey and doing things in her own way. But then she said something that really just kind of like, I just couldn't comprehend that that's a logical way of thinking. So she said, well, I tried to explain to this guy. I thought, well, that was your first error, trying to explain something to someone on the internet. It was that I log all of my treats as 300 calories, even though I know they're way more. That's how I stay on track. I was like, I don't get that. I don't get that logic. I'm sure there's some logic in her head that works. But in terms of a pure understanding how energy balance works, there is a gap in her knowledge. And that was just a wake up call for me to say, you don't always need to go and, because I think that a lot of coaches go down these rabbit holes of, I've got to get more advanced because I keep saying the same thing. So everybody knows this by now, whereas actually most people don't know the very basics. And maybe if, like you say, you stuck to things that actually are meaningful for people and meaningful for change, then you might get better result out of it. And the world might be a better place for it as well. So
yeah, no, I actually read that email this morning. It's a wild tale of delusion and cognitive dissonance for sure. But it's a representation of people's true understanding of what actually matters within that process. I don't care that you're tracking it. I don't care that you're eating it. I just care that you understand that what you're tracking is not what you're eating. They're two different things, and that's important to understand, right?
For sure.
And you can't escape that. And so also, I think we teach our clients how to essentially understand the most important things, right? So we're teaching our audiences to major in the minors.
Yeah, for sure.
Essentially, right? So what we're trying to teach our clients to do is not typically what we're trying to teach our audience how to do, right? And I think there's a disconnect there. And I'm more or less speaking to myself here in many ways. Because again, that's just a realization of like, and that goes back to something you teach your students, or what do you call your cadets, your clients?
Oh, Mavericks.
Your Mavericks. I mean, that's what you teach your clients, right? It's what are one of the best ways, and this is something you really reminded me of over the last several years, is like one of the best ways to talk to your audience is to answer the questions that your actual clients are actually asking, right? And I've compiled like notes tab now of like, anytime I get a question from a client, like I try and put it in this notes tab if I remember. And many of the recent, tweet style posts or whatever, a lot are surrounding a lot of them are kind of answering many of those questions.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I
I
had
have
the
other,
exact same uh, point to a one-to-one client this morning, and she was kind of like tying herself up in knots, trying to find out new ideas, and she kind of lacked creativity. And so I said, right, okay, how many clients you got one to one? Said about 30. Right. So I said, how many do they all check in once a week on the same day? Well, no, 15 one week, 15 the next week. Fine. Okay. So I said, I bet each one of those 15 clients in one given week asks one question or has one statement or has one struggle or something like that. So you got 15 pieces of content straight away that are just handed to you on a silver platter. Plus, there is a logic that would say people who are paying you money to coach them are your ideal client, unless you're taking on people who you really don't want to coach. So these people are actually your ideal clients. Therefore, the questions they are asking are the questions that your ideal clients who have yet to buy something are also probably wrestling with. So, how about
Mhm.
you give the client that's paying you money this detailed, contextual, nuanced answer with all of their specific circumstances, their situation, everything that matters in their personal life or whatever. So they get that detailed answer. And then give Instagram the 20-second version of the same thing that's to a more general audience. And if you just took those client check ins and just did that constantly, you'd probably hit the mark with your content and your audience more often than not, and probably way more than sitting there trying to figure out this grand idea that probably wasn't even worth thinking about in the first place. So yeah, like it's often the best way. Like talk to people who are probably going to be in the right demographic of your client, find out what their problems are, push that out on Instagram as small little solutions and pieces of information. It's not rocket
Yeah.
science.
Yeah. I mean, you obviously have really kind of turned it into a science of what you need to get what you need out of it. Right. And I'm, to be honest with everyone listening, like, regardless of where I'm at in my career, like, I'm still working on that. Like, I'm still trying to refine, what is a good lead magnet for this new thing I'm trying to do? What is, how do I trying to work through my mini chat ideas, and how do I integrate that into this thing? And like, there's
Mhm.
so many things, right, that you're trying to always refine in how I'm talking to people. And, I've been between audiences for a while that I've been trying to decide between and commit to. And Simon knows, I struggle with
Mhm.
that. Um, but at the end of the day, like, I think the most important thing, more so than any of that, is imagine you in this, kind of in the driver's seat of, or in the shoes of your client. You open up Instagram to the videos that are the most popular right now that you're likely trying to model your own videos after. And that person is more or less trying to find any value in what's being said, right? They're
Mhm.
trying to just sparse out what was valuable there. What can I take from that? Was there anything at all? Or was that just controversy? Am I just stirred up by the fact that now people are mad at each other? Now I choose a side. Now I choose an ideology. Is that what we want for our client? Is that what we want for people, really? And
Mhm.
it's, hopefully your answer is no. And that should inform you that, oh, maybe that's not the best way to actually think about making the content. Maybe it is back to kind of first principles of, what would, if I was my client and I got on social media, what do I, and I'm choosing to follow, like, I know people don't choose to follow me for entertainment. I'm not an entertaining person. I'm just not. And so, like, I have my own quirks, and if we're hanging out in person, I'll likely try to be funny or say something off color, or say, whatever it is. Like, I'm gonna try to, I'll be entertaining to some degree in person, but online my persona is not entertaining. And so I do understand that, and I professionally almost set it up that way too, because, like, I have my professional character is just a more condensed aspects of who I am, or more directed and filtered
Mhm.
aspects of who I am and how I want the content to be seen, more so than get every part of me and distract from what I'm doing. And that's a decision on my end. And I don't know if it's always been helpful. I think so a little bit more of myself in my content would be good. And I'm trying to work towards that. So I'm always trying to improve. But it's the reality of people follow me to learn something. And so I hopefully need to post things that are helpful to those people. And every time they can consume a piece of the thing that I'm creating, hopefully they're able to take one thing away from it. And if they are, they'll probably keep following me and they'll may think of me next time they have a question, or they may think of me next time that like, oh, I do need a personal trainer. I do need a coach. I do need someone to be accountable to. And I remember seeing this post from Austin. I remember saving it. Let's go back into my saves. What was that post? Oh yeah, that was the post. Man, like, let me reach out to him. Right. That's the more or less how that works. It's not, I'm so wowed by this viral reel that I cannot wait to work with you. Like, when have you ever done that yourself? You've seen a viral video of someone doing something that went viral and you're like, man, what do they sell? Can't wait to buy it. That's not how that shit works, dude. Like, you know, and if it does, like, kudos, but likely it's not. That's not how real people think.
Yeah, and it's funny. Like, it's the same for, let's say, it's the same for content is, for example, for email. So I just finished doing a course on email marketing. One of the things that I was talking about in there is that the process is more like chipping away at people's either their objections or their nervousness or their trepidation about buying and stuff like that. So by sending regular emails and or posting regular content is that you're chipping away at all of those fears, those anxieties, that trepidation. You're not expecting one email to generate you all your clients in one hit. And it's the same with the content. You're not expecting this one post. This is it. This is the one. It's a case of, okay, well, progressively over time, my content is building up trust with my audience. It's helping them break down their guard. Maybe they've kind of had a bad experience with a coach in the past, and now they're on guard, got the walls up, and now each post you make is kind of getting them more into, actually, I like this guy. Yeah, it makes sense. I kind of believe what he's saying is kind of, this all rings true. And it's kind of getting out that mentality of, oh, it's got to go viral. And then once it's go viral, then that's it. We're off to the races. Everyone's going to buy everything. It just doesn't work like that. No. Like you say, people that analyze their own buying behavior, very rarely do you see someone, I don't know, put a very nice templated reel together with the perfect music and you go, wow, I'm just going to, you know, give me, here's my credit card, take my money. It doesn't really work like that. It's that like progressive process.
Yeah. And one thing to that point too, one thing I've had in my mind for the past several years, there's just kind of this concept that keeps me creating and keeps me talking to this, trying to speak to these people that I'm trying to reach, is the clients you sign today are the clients you started talking to 3 to 6 months ago. Right. They're the people that you've been talking to, not the people you made a post for today necessarily. Right. Or the people that saw your post today likely aren't buying today. Like, they're going to buy something potentially, or investigate more, be more curious about your services in 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months. And for me, that's a helpful framework because, you know, there's that part of, you know, it's similar to, if you think about the concepts of more like maybe your terminology, it's like you kind of get them into the top end of your funnel of, hey, here I am. This is the stuff I talk about. Right. Are you interested in that? Cool. Follow along. Maybe you'll learn something along the way. They find a post. They move further and further down that funnel. Maybe they download one of your lead magnets. Maybe they try out your calorie calculator. Maybe they start getting your email series on why calorie calculators are good or bad or irrelevant or relevant to them. Oh, okay, that was really helpful. I never heard that before. Well, what else can I learn? Right. And I really like one thing that you've done really well in your businesses across time, observably, has been, where do people fall within this journey? Right. Where's that top end of the funnel? You know, for you, it's, you know, you have your lead magnets, and then you have your book, and then you have your courses, and then you have, you know, other, like, then you have your mentorships priced and relative to median income of that audience. Because it's, I mean, again, like you do have to kind of take people on this journey, if you will, and introduce them to the idea of you. And again, like kind of look at your own buying behavior. Again, I'm talking to myself here. Like I'm literally talking through like all the things I know I should be doing better.
Yeah.
So, and I know Simon knows this, but think about your own buying behavior and how would you approach the thing you're looking for other people to buy? I mean, it's very rare that you just start following someone and then you're instantly like, I'd love to pay that person $5 or $6 or $1,200 a month. Right? Like how probably not, right? But you could be more likely of like, oh, I discovered Jeff Nippard today. I'd love to buy one of his $40 training programs, try it out. That's a product for that. That happens, right?
Yeah. And it's like my current business mentor that I have is that I literally bought maybe all but one of his courses, signed up to his print newsletter, stuff like that. And so it took me that whole buying cycle to say, right, okay, he's the guy. He's the guy that I want to work with on a one-to-one basis. And for him,
those are also the clients you want. Like I would
exactly.
love that. If I was him, I'd love you as a client because you come in, and that's the other part of that too. Sorry to interrupt, but that's the other part of that too, where again, I'm trying to, I had in old businesses, but I don't have in my new one yet, is that journey solidified where once someone signs up, like they're, and I've experienced this, and I'm sure you have too, and you have many of your clients right now are that perfect client for you because they're people that have consumed all of your stuff up to that point in your kind of your top-down experience of your product offerings and services, that once they get to you to work with you in a one-on-one capacity, they've consumed all the shit that you don't want to repeat. They've consumed everything that you're like, I'm tired of answering this all the time. I wish I could just like help people with their actual problems. And so create all of the thing, again, talk to myself here, create all of the things that would cover those grounds, cover those bases. And by the time they get to you, they're like, okay, I understand that if I want to get to this goal faster, I understand that I likely need to track my macros. I now understand that because I went through your little mini course on how to do it. I started using it. I saw some results immediately. Now I just need to understand more about when do I start making these manipulations? And if I have this goal, how do I make that manipulation? If I have this goal, how do I make that? Now I'm wanting to go from 3 days a week to 5 days a week training because I'm really enjoying it. I'm seeing the progress. How do I take my training now from 3 days full body to 5 days push pull legs? That's the work you're doing with clients one-on-one. And that's a lot more enjoyable than, hey, I heard that carnivore is great. Should we try that for a bit? And you're like, no, no. No.
While you were talking, I was just trying to find an email that I received a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. And it was off the back of an email I sent about my offers being confusing because I'm kind of going through this transition of changing website platforms, and we've got AI tools come out that means some things that I've released are now redundant. So kind of refreshing the courses and stuff like that.
You talked about it in your newsletter this go around too, right?
Yeah. And he's wrote back and he says, I want lifetime access to everything you ever create. But that's a conversation for another day. But that's like, that's the type of like reaction, or that's the type of client that you want. And like what you were talking about there in terms of leading them down the journey and things like that, I got that the concept for my stuff from, I think his surname is D'Souza. I think it's Paul D'Souza. And he runs a website called Psychotactics. It's a marketing thing. And his like premise, and he's very militant about it. And his process is, or his thought process is, when you learn a martial art, jiu-jitsu, for example, everybody starts out at white belt. Nobody skips to purple, red, black belt, whatever. You always start out at the lowest rung of the ladder and you work your way through. So with his setup, he's got tons of courses and all sorts of, he's got books and all that sort of stuff. You can only start at one point. He won't let you start further down the chain. And he has this, he's known for, if you buy something, even if you buy, I don't know what the prices for more expensive stuff are, but let's say it's 10K, he will refund you that money and say, you need to go back to the beginning. If you find a way to sort of hack through and find the thing for the one you want, he said, nope, you got to go back. You got to go start at the beginning and you got to work your way through, because he doesn't want people to get to that 10 grand product and he's got to repeat everything that was in all of the other stuff. He's just say, I want to deal with people at this level in this way, because that's what makes me get excited about working with someone one-to-one. And so that's kind of how I've developed my things, to say, okay, you start with the social media content, podcast, that sort of stuff. Then logically, you buy the book or maybe a course, and then you go to the next thing, and then you go to the next thing. And then if at that point you want to come and talk to me about group or one-to-one mentorship, then you kind of know the way I do stuff. So now I don't have to convince you that my methods work or that I'm worth working with, but also it's a case of we don't have to start from square one, which arguably for me personally is not necessarily what gets me excited from a one-to-one basis. I like, sinking your teeth into a business that's a little bit further along, is maybe struggling with some various different issues and stuff like that. So having that process of where you know what's the ideal journey from someone not knowing you to being your most avid fan. And obviously there's, unless you're going to be as militant about it as that guy is, then you're going to get people who kind of like start at slightly different points, but most of the time they're going to follow the process you want. And I think that's a real valuable thing to have if you can create it. A bit more difficult if you've got one thing, but
yeah, it is. And that's kind of where I'm at. With the new business, the new venture and stuff, it's been, I have my core offer of coaching, and I'm at a spot where it's like I have to get that core offer to work, and get people continuing to come through there, because that's keeping the lights on. But in the same vein, I also know and realize that I want to set this up for the long term. I want this to be a long-term play. I want the decisions I make to be long-term ideas that play out over time, that really have those concepts in mind, right? And I think that's, even just approaching it like that, and that's how you teach it, which is very helpful. But even approaching it like that is extremely powerful versus, well, I have my coaching. I'm trying to increase my monthly revenue by 5K a month. How many what could I sell that's valuable there? Okay, I'll come up with a program that I got to sell this many. Okay, let's do that. Right. And of course that could work. That adds revenue to your business. Great. But also, how does that fit into the greater whole of the big picture of what you're trying to create with your business? And those are the conversations I'm having in my own head, that I'm really trying to flesh out more, because the more space I give it, the more clear things have become of, if you'd asked me 3 months ago, 6 months ago, I'd have said one thing, but now it's like, nah, maybe not, and I think it's changing in this way and whatever.
Yeah, I think like it's a case of when you're thinking about like new offers or services and things like that, and what I touched on in the email that we kind of like referring back to, is that it's a case of that thing you're going to create's got to solve a problem for a specific type of person that follows you. And what you don't want to do is create two products that can solve the same problem or have a lot of crossover between them. So you ideally wouldn't create a group program that's almost identical to your one-to-one program, for example, and the only difference is possibly a little bit of extra contact with you. There's not enough green space between the two to say, right, this is for these people and this one is for these people in this position. There has to be that kind of like, if you're here, buy this. If you're here, buy this. And if you want this, buy that. And so just as an example of that, so for example, I got a course on email marketing. So that doesn't cut across my course on Canva design creation, which doesn't cut across my mentorship, which is implementing things about niching, branding, and stuff like that, right? They're very purposefully all about one broad topic of social media marketing, email marketing, but they're very siloed in nature. And that's by design, because I don't want lots of things that muddy the water, that feel like this is all the same thing. And now it feels like the same thing, but just at different price points. For me, it has to be like, okay, if you're in this position, you're struggling with this, go here. If you're here, go there. And having that delineation between those offers, I think, makes things easier for people to understand what they should buy. Because as the old cliche goes, confused people never buy. So if they don't know the difference between these two offers, I had the same problem when I was first starting out with Iron Paradise Fitness. I had Lean Life Uni, Lean Life Method, Lean Life Transformation. Everything was called Lean Life, right? And everyone's going, the Lean Life thing, is that this? And I was like, no, that's the one-to-one program. Okay, well, what's this then? Well, that's this. You end up just, they're so confused because everything sounds the same that you have to kind of like talk them through it. And when I kind of like explain this topic to people, I use the difference between Google and Apple. And maybe I'm biased because I'm an iOS guy, but if you look at like Google Apps, if I bring that up on my computer right now, right, everything, all their little logos have got the same look about them. Like the Google Mail, Google Drive, they've all got that same color scheme, and they all look very similar. And so sometimes at a glance, you have to kind of really kind of focus on which one am I pressing here?
What's the difference between console and admin?
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah, like chat, calendar, they're all different shapes, but they're the same color. So the straight up view, it all looks a little bit of a wash. Whereas you look at the Apple apps, like Safari is very different to the Notes app, very different to the calendar app. And that's the thought process that I tried to bring to my products, is that straight away you can recognize these are different things for different purposes straight away. There's no kind of like thought process that has to go into that. And that's kind of like, I think for me, how to create a bit of demarcation between offers, which makes it easier, arguably, to sell stuff.
Yeah, that's honestly, man, it's a roadblock I'm currently running into a bit with my, that I've found I've run into a little bit with my Lifting Hub offer and my one-on-one coaching. It's, they're very different price points, but I don't know, through experience of like trying to get people in there and them coming and going, it's been a realization of like, I don't know. And then just having this conversation today and like reading your newsletter and all of that stuff from this past month with the guy that what's his name? I mean, I follow him. The guy that came out with that 6-week accelerator fat loss thing.
Jason Monroe.
Jason. Yeah. I follow. Yeah. And so that was like, oh, well, okay. That becomes more clear. It's like, I do think people they're not different enough. To me, they're clear, but that doesn't matter, right?
That's to them, the thing, is that it's always clearer in your own head than it is for everybody else. And it's the same for like, I don't know, when you're, I always, I'm taking, I don't know if you have it over in the States, but like, like Masterclass, the site where you kind of learn.
Yeah. But we have it here. Yeah.
So we have BBC Maestro, which is, I guess,
okay.
The UK. We still get the other one, but BBC Maestro.
Seems very British way to say Masterclass.
Yeah. So I was watching a series of videos by Harlan Coben, who's like the novelist, writes a lot of thrillers, they get done on Netflix quite a lot. And he was talking about his process of writing books and writing novels, and how he kind of goes about this process of making everything different and making all of his stories very, very different. And it kind of, again, just woke me up to thinking that you do have to have this kind of like you can talk about the same topic. Like he writes books about the same thing, but there are ways and means in which you can create them. Each one exists in a very, very different way because of how you approach it, how, in his case, how you write it and stuff like that. And like your point that you were talking about with the app and one-to-one coaching, is it different enough and stuff like that? And the point there is, I think that it's as difficult to sell someone on $1,000 a month program as it is a $10 a month program. It's as difficult. And people disagree with that. But and when I say difficult, I mean you'll put the same amount of effort in. You'll put that same amount of content out. You'll send the same number of emails. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes, like, if there isn't that difference in the offer, people go for the cheaper one because that's what people will do. If they don't know, they'll pick based on price. And then just to touch on that point you made about it being clear in your own head, going back to that Maestro series that I watched, he talks about like dialogue. So when you're writing dialogue, it's probably clear in your head who's saying what in this dialogue. But if you don't put like he said, she said, he replied, she replied, whatever, people are lost. Like I don't know who's saying what right now. And it's like having that same thing with your own content and your own emails or your own offers, like very clear in your head what this is for and why this is different. But unless you really have a way of explaining it or showing it, then your audience can have that same confusion as you might do in a novel that's bad dialogue attribution, and you go veering off track and you lose the plot, and people lose the plot with your offers and go somewhere else. To the charlatan who makes it super clear, like, buy my supplement and you'll do this. Great, cool, I'll do that.
Yeah, we have a lot to learn from that, I think. I think there's a part of buying behavior that we have a lot to learn from the people that we typically see as an enemy of our industry, like the people we talked about earlier, because they are so clear, right? And I think we want things to be, we understand things as the professional in this space. I mean, it's the same thing. You go to a different industry, right? Like if I walk into Home Depot, if I walk into a hardware store, and I'm looking at a wall of screws. Well, screw's a screw. There's different lengths. And that's literally my extent of knowledge of screws. But you get someone that works there who or maybe has a background in this their whole life. They're like, oh, well, no, some go into wood, some go into steel, some go into concrete, some are used with this material, some are used with this. If you're using this for this project, you'll want to use this. And I'm like, whoa, start back from the beginning. Like, what's this one do? Right. And it's the same, like, again, I'll repeat this a million times. Like I'm speaking to myself here. Like this is helpful for me because again, you have to get out of your own head and talk through it. So thanks, Simon. But it's that idea of imagine walking into a place and not understanding anything. And that's where most people are starting in this journey. And one thing those guys do, or those people do, will say that we all see as that enemy that's, are 7, 8, 9-figure earners who a lot just sell a bunch of crap. How it's how we see it. Well, maybe it's not a bunch of crap. Maybe some of it's misguided or sold in a sleazy way, but on the back end of it, it could just be very simple and helpful for people, right? And maybe that's what is good about it. And I don't always love how people get there with their content, but at the end of the day, I appreciate that someone is taking a chance on themselves. They're trying something new and they're just trying something, right? And they're starting at least from the basics of understanding foundations. And if they get there through that person's content, great. They'll eventually find their way. And then I kind of see my job as partly is like, maybe they'll find their way out of that and they'll realize that there was a lot of shortcomings to their methods. There was a lot of ideology rooted in that they don't necessarily agree with now because they went through it and they're like, well, this isn't the way. This is terrible. I hate this. I like
Mhm.
eating this and that, and I like working out this way, not that way. And then you're kind of there to, it's kind of the coach I've been in throughout my careers. I'm usually not your first coach. I'm usually someone that you've made it through, you've made it through the free app. You started with one of those free apps in the app store that are, it's a tech startup that's hemorrhaging money that essentially is just created to be bought and sold. And they don't really care about money. They just care about their member base so they can sell it to a bigger conglomerate, right? There's That's most workout apps on the ground floor. If you look at them structurally as like a company, like most of them aren't set up to actually make any money. And again, outside looking in, I may be talking out of my ass there, but to me, like and then just talking to some people who've been in that world, that's kind of how they're set up. But that person started to work out. Great. That's amazing. Like, I'm glad that you got into the gym now. Like, I'm not going to steer you away from that app. I'm not going to tell you not to do, understanding that, okay, my ideal client may come from these places. Okay, what's the helpful information to get you from where you are there into where I can help you? And I'm just trying to, you know, again, speaking to myself here, I'm trying to bridge that gap, right? I'm trying to get you from
Mhm.
what's happening in those early programs, what's happening in that when you start to pay attention to these things. Now, how can I help you create some context, create a little nuance around it, better understand how you may fit in and how that may fit into the bigger picture
Mm.
for you and this thing across your life. Um, and that's kind of where my coaching ends up. I kind of get you into that where it's like, yeah, you've done all these things. It's helpful. Let me show you how you kind of take all that stuff and we put it into a program that makes a little bit more sense for your life. We take a nutritional approach that makes a little bit more sense for your life and your preferences right now. And I show you how to kind of just make sense of it week to week and know what to start to adjust things and when life events come up, X, Y, and Z, right? So understanding that a lot of what people need is so simple. And that's something that I don't think I've done, admittedly, very well in recent years. I don't think I've served the audience that I ultimately want to end up serving because they go other places because I don't have that step one for them right
Mhm.
now.
Mm.
And that's something
Yeah.
I'm working on trying to create and think about. Like, what is that step one? Whether
Yeah.
that's
And
for gym goers or coaches or whatever.
yeah, and it's interesting. Like, I was literally, so I'm starting. You're the first of these sort of newer podcasts that I'm doing with guests and talking about their business and kind of how it's developed and how they approach content now versus then, and all those sorts of things. But I'm also starting a different solo series, and rather than just talking about one topic, I'm going to talk about lots of different things. And I was just sketching out some notes for that. And one of the things like I sort of sketched out was what was it related to? I think it was related to selling because basically I've had two detailed conversations with two one-to-one clients in the last week about they're feeling sleazy when it goes to a selling process. Like they don't like
Mm,
the selling process online.
yeah.
So we were talking about various different strategies for doing that. And what I kind of said to them is, and I had like a little nice little acronym for it that I made
Of
up on the
course.
spot, which was you need to be their NLO, their next logical option.
Yeah, that's
So,
good.
so saying like, okay, well, I don't have to necessarily sell in every single post. I don't have to be this like put out these posts saying I'm looking for five motivated, busy professionals who want to do this. You don't have to do that, right? What you want to just think about is what's the next logical option for this person after seeing this post that I just made. If I made a post about, I don't know, how to write better subject lines for an email, what's their next logical option? So the next logical option for them might be, okay, well, join my email list and I'll give you a guide on how to get more from your organic content in terms of lead gen, right? That's their next logical option. So I'm not necessarily selling anything because I'm giving something away for free. I'm getting people onto my email list, which is advantageous for me. But I'm just trying to think about, okay, what is that next logical option? And if you do that consistently in your content, what you'll end up doing is you as a business become their next logical option for what they want to achieve because you gave them all these next logical options in your content. So I think that, having that thought process of how do I get someone from being stuck to moving forward should be part of the content creation process. And then because of the nature of content, especially the way it's made now, 15 seconds does not give you enough time to say something truly transformative. So there's always a need for a next thing. And if you choose not to provide a next logical option on that post, well, arguably you do that person a disservice because they want more. So you can kind of say, okay, well, cool, right? We're talking about nutrition here. So if you want more help with your nutrition, then, I've got this free thing, give it away, just join my email list and you can have it, right? Just your sales pitch at that point is very casual, but you are positioning it as this next logical option. And I think that's a good way to approach sales without actually overtly selling anything. And there are obviously many other ways to do it, but I think that's a very, if you're someone who is very much like, I don't like selling, it's not my thing. Like, I don't like selling. I don't do sales calls for a specific reason because I don't want to sit there and like, have conversations and try and, do all these sales tactics on calls. I don't want to do all that.
As soon as I get an objection, I'm like, okay, great, bye. It's like I'm okay.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, great. I believe you because if I said that to someone, I'd want them to believe me too, even if that is just to escape the conversation. And if you're trying to escape conversation, you're probably not someone is ready to work together because like we're going to be having conversations every week, dude. So hopefully you're interested to some degree in spending some time with me because you're also going to be telling me, if you're having regular poops across the week as well. So there's going to be a level of like, I'm kind of in it with this person now. They seem like a guy that can help versus I'm just going to hard sell this person on the idea that, like my post yesterday, that they're an unconfident, skinny man and they need my help. Like if you want to be less shitty of a person, you need to work with me. You need to, if you want to be less, you want to be more appealing. It's like, dude, that's
so one of my friends actually wrote about it in my book, and she said she sent me these voice notes. She usually sends me a voice note every few days, like 10 15 minutes long about what's going on in her business and stuff like that. So she said that she was working with a business mentor who subsequently got fired, and his tactic for growing and finding people on LinkedIn, he said, look for people who have got fat round faces in their profile picture and message them to see if they need weight loss advice. So I was like, that's got to be the worst tactic I've ever heard. Basically, scour the platform looking for people who you think are fat and reach out to them. I was like, surely, like, and she was paying him quite a significant amount of money. I was like, you got to fire him. That's like, no one should pay for that advice. No one should do that, let alone pay for that advice. But it's the same thing. Like I think like as with any topic, you get people who just haven't got a clue come out of the woodwork with the next valuable thing or valuable thing, quote unquote, or the tactic that worked for them or whatever it is, and not really understand some principles that would help other people get there. Because let's be honest, like you talked about earlier about you kind of just like go with the flow and you do what you think is best at that moment, and then sometimes that pushes your business forward, sometimes it stays where it is, sometimes it goes back a little bit, and then you just kind of keep working through that process, and then eventually, given enough time, you get somewhere good. And like my business at the beginning was very, very similar. I was came from a marketing background, but I wasn't doing online coaching and I wasn't on my own doing all this sort of stuff on social media and so on and so forth. So a lot of it was, okay, I think this should be the way to go. Okay, yeah, that kind of worked, but didn't work that well. So let's go back to the drawing board and do something else and do something else and do something else. And then you end up getting somewhere. And I think where some of these people go wrong, these charlatans, is that they do that one thing and they just hit the jackpot straight away and they think that's now going to work for everybody. So let's just go and sell that as a thing rather than saying, you know what, do you know what? Did I just get lucky there? Was that just right place, right time? And that's just not going to work for anybody else. And then that's where I think you get a lot of these people who have these random tactics like search for round faces and see what happens.
Yeah, man, that's just the wrong approach. Even if it works, I mean, it's just, again, it's, yeah, I just have such an issue with that, man. I have such an issue with kind of the entire like movement around belittlement, negativity online, and mainly just for the sake, not because we should all be in peace and love and harmony, which that's not a bad thing, but it's just like I'm not up my own ass to think that that's reality. But there's a nature to, well, how would you want to be spoken to? It kind of, for me, it's always kind of the golden rule of, treat others how you'd want to be treated. And I don't like to be talked down to. I don't like to be talked to like I'm stupid. I don't like to be reminded of my insufficiencies and insecurities. Like I don't like that, and I would say I'm a very even-keeled person who's, I most of the coaching in my life early growing up was rooted around exposing my insufficiencies and insecurities and yelling at me and exploiting me, and to the point where I just got better and improved as an athlete. Right. So it's not that I don't have experience with being targeted for that. I mean, most of my childhood, not from my parents, but from coaches that I had. Thankfully, my family was very supportive and not like that, but which had a good balance. But I think that we're doing that with people, and you're not going to shame someone into long-term change. I think you can shame someone into short-term change for sure. But at the end of the day, I don't think that's a good solution. And so again, it's kind of taking a look at that bigger picture from your social media approach. And this is what I've been trying to do. I'm trying to think through more is like, kind of what is that more global impact that I'd like to have? And then how do I fit into that? And I think that's where I'm trying to position my business more or less, rather than just another person shouting on the internet that sells you stuff that may or may not work for you. Right. Like I just don't think that's necessarily a good play. It may be a fine play business wise, but for me, at this point in my life, I really want to create something that fills the void for people and makes me money and gives my life more freedom again and all of that stuff. But I also want it to fit into the bigger picture of what people need in life.
I think it's one of those things that comes down to whether it's nutrition or business or whatever. Most of the right answers sit in that sort of muddy gray area in the middle where, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money and be financially secure and financially successful, and doing certain things that aren't harmful to others in order to get there, in terms of using marketing tactics and persuasion and stuff like that. As long as it's done in a way that's not negatively manipulative, then that's all great. But I personally think, again, maybe I've got a very small sample size in terms of it's just the content that I see is not necessarily representative of the entire content that's out all over social media. But I feel like there's a shift more from, like, it used to be a case of give value, give value, give value. It used to be like the mantra from the Gary Vee people. And
yeah. What's that? Jab, 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 right hook.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I kind of agree with that and disagree with that in the same breath, in the sense
Yeah.
that you should lead with value, but just giving value and giving value and giving value without any means or processes and systems to convert that value into something doesn't meet that gray area middle of you getting what you want and your audience getting what they want and everybody being mutually happy. Just giving value doesn't really hit that mark. Out content and doing stuff purely for their own benefit. And it's the first thought is how much money can I make? How many like I need to get to 10K a month. I need to be able to, buy a Lamborghini or whatever it is that I want to do. And not to say that that's everybody's goal, but it feels like people have just did too far the other way and gone too far into finances first and not getting balance between, okay, well, maybe the way to the financial future that I want is to lead with value, but have systems and processes in the middle that help me achieve the second goal. And I think that that's kind of where, everyone now panders to the algorithm because their initial I inner, whether they consciously realize it or not, their inner drive is this post isn't successful unless it gets likes, unless it gets reach, unless it gets views. Not is this the most helpful thing that I could post today? And I don't feel like many the content I see, I don't feel like a lot of people are getting that balance right. And I think a lot of people are either putting out content that does nothing or they're putting out content that maybe that gets some likes, maybe gets some reach, but actually no one's buying anything because you have just made it to get views. And that
Yeah.
that that doesn't necessarily mean people will buy stuff. And I think that is that balance that is a little bit lost. And like I'll give you another example is that like I put out a post several weeks ago. It was just like off the cuff meme. I think I wrote about it in a newsletter. Ben Affleck and doing this smoking thing and what have you. And I made that while I was on the treadmill at the gym because I didn't have any content schedules. I thought, okay, cool, I'll just throw that out. And that post got me not very many likes, and it got shown to one person who didn't already follow me, but it got me 100 leads. So there was something about the value in terms of the humor. There's probably, I can't remember what I wrote, but there's probably some value in the caption, and there was certainly some value in the next logical option, the next logical step. So that valuable post that I created on the basis of not that this is going to make me money, not that this is going to make me leads, or how much reach can I get out of it, how many likes. It's like, this will make a few people laugh. And if I put at the end that they can get this if they comment this keyword, that'll help them out if they actually want some like proper advice, not a laugh. Like that's my intention with that post, but that gives me 100 leads rather than going and chasing, right, how can I do this like video hack thing that's going to get me a bunch of views? And
Yeah.
I don't know, just for me personally, again, my sample size is tiny, but I feel like people are maybe getting that mix and that blend wrong, which is not giving them the results that they want.
Yeah, and it's the difference. It's sort of that it's the delta between do you want to be helpful or do you want to be famous? Do you want to build a business or do you want to be known?
Mm.
And for me, my goal has always been, and I've been talking about this, I presented on this at a coaches conference, small private conference that we had in Vancouver back in 2018, early 2018. I've been talking about this, but even before then, it's like my goal with being a trainer is to just keep being a trainer. Like my goal has always been, I just want like observably people who look at the legends in the personal training space, like people that have just been around forever, right? You're like your Dan Johns, your Mike Boyles, your, all of these people, even like your Eric Helms now, who, who's kind of just indoctrinated into the fitness industry, who is a career trainer. Obviously, they've diversified their career, but at the end of the day, like they've been in the trenches for decades. being a coach. And that's always been my goal. It's like, I just want to be a trainer and I want to have a long, successful career because, if I don't do anything else with my life, if I don't hit certain goals or whatever, it's like, well, I think it's a respectable and admirable thing to at least have had a good career at something and helped a lot of people do something that they didn't know how to do before. And I think that's admirable. And so that's kind of my a core value of mine is just, if it even fits into that category of like, I just want to be around for a long time and I want to be helpful to people. And I want to become, and where I'm getting is like, I don't want to just be known. I want to be known for what I do. And I want to be known because of what I do well. Right. And so that to me, those are two different things. And we kind of we're currently kind of living in the social media world where and also it's like reinforced, right? It's incentivized and it's reinforced of like these comparisons of like, I think TikTok's been the biggest explosion of this, and then Reels obviously, but TikTok like majorly. It's like this person's life a year ago to now, and they're like in this, mansion and they're a millionaire and they got all these cars and whatever. And it's like, now they have a top podcast and it's like this person just made stupid TikToks for a year and like now they're this person who's famous and talking to Drake and like, and it's just this weird thing that we observe and that we're like, well, that's what I do. So like, let's do that. And then along the way, like all my problems are going to be solved. I'm going to sell things. Whatever I come out with will sell because at the end of the day, it is kind of a law of numbers. Like even back like in 2017, when I didn't really have when my content started to blow up, I didn't really have many offers. Like I had coaching, which wasn't selling well. It was good enough, but like not well, because I didn't have good systems. I didn't know that this was like pre even me doing any sort of like apply. I do a good follow up. We get on a sales call. I talk to you about it. I lay out the offer. Like this was before I even started doing that. It was just like, I have a form on my website. Apply if you want. Here's the thing to buy. We'll start coaching. Right. And so systems weren't there. And then I at least had this one training program. And this one training program, I decided, I was like, well, I think I originally had it. It was like I forget what it was. Maybe it was like a $60, $70, $80 program because there was a lot to it. And there's a lot of like extra stuff in it. And then I was like, what would happen if I just made this program $10? And as I'm growing, I'll just keep it in my bio. And the fact that I'm, some days I could gain 1,000, 2,000 followers overnight because a video was going viral. And I'd wake up to my only system was to sell this $10 program and then hope that someone would apply to my coaching. And at that time, like law of numbers did help me because I was to a point we're living in Australia and I didn't have much income coming in. So I was like, I was nervous to pay my bills when we were first over there. And then when that kind of all started to take off, I'd wake up and I had sold, over like throughout the night and throughout that last day, I'd sold maybe 30, 40 programs. And it's like, oh, so law of numbers did help me there. Now now I'm scrambling to figure out like systems and how do I keep these people in and how do I even get them better in the door and then sell them something else? And then like all of these things that I've always kind of been behind on that. And I have found success in my career through me creating social content that's been helpful for people. But one thing I've always kind of struggled with is I kind of just do the thing and the thing starts to work. And then this has been a mistake of mine and this is what I'm trying to do differently with this business, which is why I've probably agonized on it a little bit longer than maybe otherwise I should have. But it's trying to set things up first or earlier that have systems that once things start to kind of pick back up and people start to pay more attention, and I start to create more content that has more of that potential to maybe pick up some more, whether it's new followers or more people on a post, that there's somewhere for them to go when they get there, right? And that's obviously all of your products are geared towards creating that, which is very, very helpful. But I think many of us at the core of it, it's like, I also have never, I'm not a, I've never like called myself an entrepreneur, business owner, or like a business person. Like I'm just a coach. Like I've always just been a coach. And I think for that I'm a coach that had built a business, and that business built on sort of its foundations became successful because we just did the thing we did well. And we had enough crowdsourcing of content across the internet that people were constantly flowing in, right? You kind of stack up, you compound all of that interest over time, and people just, you're getting eyeballs, right? And like you have enough videos on YouTube that have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of views that are getting thousands of views a day, like, and you have some sort of call to action in there to at least follow you on Instagram or to apply to your coaching or to buy a program on your website, like you're going to get enough people to at least be interested or start to follow you and then kind of become and get in your system. But in recent years, like I haven't had that compounding effect quite as much. And so not having the compound effect of people coming in quite as fast or as much, and then not having the system set up quite yet to kind of facilitate whoever is there to maximize that, it's been kind of that struggle, right? Mm-hmm. And so my point is I've always been able to make up for my deficiencies in my business acumen and systems due to reach, because I've always had since 2017, I've always had a bigger reach. And so I could subsidize my insufficiencies with my reach. But sure. I found myself more recently where I'm no longer in that position. Even though I have more I have a lot of followers, blah, 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 right? We don't need to sit here until we're blue in the face of like followers don't equal success in business or whatever. And I'm here to tell you that is a reality, right? And there's an importance to your systems. There's an importance to how you're presenting this information in a way that's not only going to just make you known, but it's going to make you known for the thing that you actually do. And to me, again, those are two separate things. And I'm trying to approach it more from the latter of I want to more or less be known for the thing that I do. And that's help people make helpful content. And hopefully on the back end, obviously your goal is to make a successful business out of that, because that allows me the creative freedom that I'm not bogged down by the day-to-day struggle of just getting people in the door. I'm now in a position where I can do what I do best and put out content to help, that then I have all the systems set up to where it's like, yeah, great. Like, let me keep doing my thing. I'll keep putting out content. I'll keep talking to these people, having these conversations, but get in my system and I'm here to help. But until you do that, like but having those allows your mind to free up to do the creative, right? And I've just been over the past several years, I've been in this like, well, this couple more specifically, I've just been in this, my creative has been zapped in a big way because I'm so bogged down by the other, you know, and that if you can, like, just create the systems, create the front end lead gens, create the small products that at least cover your bases. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, at least with those things. And then my coaching, towards like, I just need enough to create my base again, my foundation again, to where I have a little bit more creative bandwidth to then solve bigger problems, right? And put out content that reaches more people and gets more people in.
Yeah. And I think like to follow on from that, a lot of it is the whole situation around like marketing and business and probably many other things is that it's all just full of contradictions, because on the one hand, you know, having systems, having processes, and let's say whether it's an email automation or it's a ManyChat flow or all these different sorts of things, that is to a certain degree adding complexity into your business. But on the same side of that is the more simple you make things, then probably the more successful you'll be. If everything's like super complicated with like tons of offers that all kind of bleed into each other, and you're trying to be too fancy with all the content and stuff like that, that complexity works against you. And I, the way that I try to, the processes that I get people to put into place. So I call my thing, like at the moment, is it had a little name change. It's called lazy marketing, right? And so the principle behind that is not to be lazy from the beginning, is to get to a point where being lazy is an option. That's like the premise. So you actually put in quite a lot of groundwork in the initial stages so that you know your audience inside out. You have like a solid offer that does stand apart in this offer stack, and you have the processes, the systems, the sales page, you know how to write emails and stuff like that. And then once you've got all of that in place, well, then you can just basically, what I do is I do 3 things every single day, and then more if I want to. Send a daily email, make a post, answer all my client questions. And that's it. If I do, because I have the systems and the process in place, if all I do is those 3 things, I'm good to go, right? And obviously, most days I'll do more because there's always like a to-do list as long as your arm. But I think that's the thing, is you have this, like, you have complexity, but you're also trying to make it simple at the same time. And it's always this constant flip-flop in your head between, am I making this too complicated? How do I make this? Is like getting really confusing now, but it's kind of always wrestling with that. It's never a very, very simple and straightforward process. And knowing that, like, even my stuff, like when I first launched my Social Mavericks community, I was like 2021, maybe November.
Yeah, I was a
Like
part of
that.
that initial, like,
Yeah. And that offer and how that works has changed so many times in 2.5, 3 years, right?
yeah.
And it's only like now that I'm thinking, right, that's what it should be. I feel like I've got it now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like what you were saying earlier about like you haven't got this all mapped out from day one, and you just said, right, okay, cool, I know where I'm going. This is my, successful business up here. I'm starting here. This is the direct path to there. There's a lot of like finding out. Like you always make like the decision you think is the best at the time. You run with it, and then you see what happens. And I still do that same thing. Like, I'll be like, okay, right, I think the group should work like this, and this is like, yeah, okay. People can tell me they want this, so I'll go make this, and I'll go make that, and you go, okay, right, it doesn't quite feel right, and you're kind of just feeling around for it. So I think that it's good for people to hear that, even people who they think like, okay, well, there's several rungs above where I am and where I want to be, is that we're all still just kind of feeling out this process. We're just at different stages of the game. The kind of process is still the same. It's just that people are at like different stages of doing that. And I just think like in business, I think even if you get different like monetary incomes, you still have problems. You still have stresses. You just switch problems. Okay, now I don't have that problem of paying my bills, but I have a whole different set of problems now. And you just keep exchanging one problem for the next. So they never disappear. It's just kind of like nature of.
Yeah. And I think yeah, exactly. Well said. And to the point of just knowing you for a long time. I mean, we've had a relationship since what, 2019?
Maybe even before then, but yeah,
2018, maybe.
Maybe
Yeah.
18.
Yeah. Long time. And like just knowing you and observing you over the years, it's like, I love the fact that you've branded yourself a lazy marketer. Just like knowing you, because there's so many aspects of that fit, but also knowing you, it's like you're the least lazy person day to day one of the least lazy persons I know day to day from a business perspective. Like it's very admirable, and it's something I look up to in a big way of like, and you can ask my wife, like I say your name a lot of like, Simon's doing this now. He's like changing this out. And like, so interesting. It's so crazy, like how much you're doing to constantly upgrade offers. And that's just been a part, again, of trying to be as transparent for the coaches that maybe are listening, because it's like, this stuff doesn't go away, and it doesn't matter who you are or what stage you're at in your career. It's like, this stuff matters. And it's, again, it's taken me, I wouldn't say it's taken me a long time. Like I've had an online business that's been paying my bills to some, at least to some degree, or at certain points in my career, really, really well. It's kind of gone up and down through seasons, but since 2014, 2015, like I've been doing this a long time, but that doesn't make you immune to changes in the market, doesn't make you immune to things that may happen in your professional career, personal life that change things dramatically, right? And that's kind of a position that I'm in currently where it's like, okay, I did all that front leg and work, or kind of like that foundational work, had built something successful, was in kind of this lazy marketer mode. I was in sort of this mode where I could coast and just create as I wanted to create. And as long as I showed up and did my daily job, like I wasn't hurting for anything and I was doing well. And then that changed. The market changed, professional things changed. And then you find you find yourself back at square one a little bit. And that's tough, but it happens. And the fact that, to go back to the point of like, you set things up to be a lazy marketer, I think is the most genius thing you can do. Right. And I that's why I love your thing so much, like, and your brand, and like kind of how you present it, because there's a part of being, whether it's a coach or just creative person, that bogging yourself down with the early stages like just forever is so exhausting. Like if you're in for a guy like you, I think you enjoy it, I would say, just a lot, right?
Yeah, most of the time.
Parts of it, right? And some of it's based off necessity, which again, admirable, because like you're constantly evolving and pivoting. But it's good to watch and to see, because many things that I've done in my career up to this point kind of just worked. And I didn't have to do a lot of different iterations, and I didn't have to do a lot of different things. Now, looking back, there's a lot of pivots and adjustments and small recalibrations and stuff across the years that I worked really hard on. And if you ask my wife, she's like, you're selling yourself short there, because you constantly were talking about it, thinking about it, obsessing over it. But once it's built, it's built. But to understand that you do have to constantly reiterate, and it doesn't matter at what stage you're at, right? It doesn't matter how far you've gotten. I think for myself, even, I've had to give, again, trying to be as transparent as I can here, like I've had to give my ego a check in a big way, because kind of starting from scratch again, it's like, well, and I'm not like an egotistical, I don't lead with this, but we all have an ego, right? We all have this like, well, damn, dude, I've made it to this point. I do have a best-selling book. I am known across the industry. I do speak at bigger conferences. Like I do have coaches come up to me and just ask all these questions, or look up to me, or want to work with me because I'm X, Y, and Z. And then I kind of go back, I come back home and I'm like, yeah, but I'm still trying to solve some really basic problems here again, and
yeah,
there's a part of that where it's like, it doesn't feel great. But it doesn't matter how it feels, because it's just the reality now of what's happening. And that's something I've had to sort of accept and get on the other side of. And it's taken us some time. I know how kind of long I've been trying to trudge through some of these things, but I think there's an acceptance to, no one's immune to these early stages. No one's immune to these systems. No one's immune to setting up your offers properly and having a good offer. Right. And you're not going to stumble upon, like, sometimes you may stumble upon one. And that's been a lot of my career, and it's been like, I kind of stumbled upon something good here, and I kind of kept it going, and it compounded over time. But when you stop stumbling on things, it gets difficult if you're not ready to face the other.
And like one of the things that I've experienced is a bit like you were saying earlier when you were talking about, like, you want to be known for what you do, not just for the fact of having a form of, let's call it, celebrity about the whole situation. You don't want to be like the Kardashian of personal training. You want people to go
No,
like,
not at
what do they
all.
actually do?
Yeah.
Okay, he's known for this. And for me, like stuff like lazy marketing came from just coaching a lot of people.
Hmm.
And actually then like obviously I had a pretty good idea of what people's struggles were and things like that. And having been a coach, an online coach in the past, I'd had some of those experiences. But just talking to more and more people, and then I kind of like found like basically a lot of coaches are like you. They want to coach. They don't
Hmm.
want to spend their life marketing. They want to coach people. So then it's like, okay, okay, well, what's my job then? Well, my job is to help you do the minimal amount of marketing that allows you to do the most amount of coaching, and that's where that kind of like process comes from. So, um, a lot of it is like just leading with trying to do your job first, listening and hearing what people are telling you, and then figuring out, right, okay, what do these people actually want? And then how do I create the thing that gives them what they want? And then, like, sometimes it is literally just not trying to lead with, okay, well, how can I make the most viral reel, or how can I make this the copy on my sales page, make me a ton of sales. Obviously, you probably want to do that at some point, but you want to
Yeah.
lead with, okay, well, who am I helping here and what is their real problem? Because as soon as you figure that bit out, well, then the sales part is quite easy. Like the marketing part is quite easy. You don't have to do much marketing if you've got this thing that people really want because you heard them and you spoke to a ton of people and that's what they want. Well, then the sales process is quite easy, right?
Hmm.
And like a lot of people in my space talk about, okay, we're going to simplify social media marketing, or we're going to simplify this, simplify this. Well, what's simpler than being bone idle? Um, there's about just saying, well, I've got the systems and processes and I know what I'm doing now. So I can just fling this post out and I can send an email and I'll be all right. That's like as simple as you can make it. Now making it sound very, very simple at that point. But
Yeah.
that's kind of the idea, is that if you don't do that foundational work of being a coach, talking to people who are potentially your ideal client and trying to lead with how you help them, you'll always end up in the situation of your like I don't know, like what is it, the cart before the horse and all that sort of stuff. It's like
Yeah. It really is a cart before the horse.
you're doing the marketing before you've figured out what you're actually going to sell and how you're going to sell it and how you're going to be different to everybody else.
Hmm.
Whereas if you led with, okay, how am I going to be different? What is it I'm actually going to sell? What do people actually want to buy? Because that's very different from what they say they'll buy. And then say, okay, well, how do I market that then? And if you did it that way around, whereas I think social media and people's like hunger for reach, followers, likes, and stuff like that gets them thinking about the things in the wrong way. And like you were saying as well earlier, that you're probably not people's first coach that they work with because they go with other people. I feel like the most of the people that I work with, I'm sort of like, how would I best describe it? I'm fixing problems that have been created by other people. That's mainly the type of coach that falls into my sphere, is that I'm fixing problems that were created over the last 5 years because you did stuff the wrong way around. I don't get that many people in proportionately that, right, I'm brand new here. I haven't done a single thing. Show me the way. I don't usually get that person. I usually get, right, I've been doing stuff and it's not been going well. And so's told me to do all of this sort of stuff and it's not really worked. And okay, right, okay. This is how we do it. And I had a message from one of the guys who's just started my group program, and he's just literally going through the first couple of lessons and stuff. And he just said, look, I've never thought about my business or my offers in this way at all, ever. And I was like, right,
Hmm.
okay, that's a good thing, because, this is probably why your business isn't quite where you want it to be. Um, and I think I can't remember what the hell got me into that subject. So I'm just going to stop there. So I can't loop back to whatever the point was I was originally making. But yeah, that.
Yeah. It's immensely helpful. And especially in the fitness industry, it really ties into the journey. We're just putting ourselves in the driver's seat of what our clients are, you know, struggling with and thinking and doing, right? And that's,
Mm.
I think your gravity method really kind of lays it all out really clearly. You know, it's like, who are your people, and what do they struggle with, and how do you solve those problems? You know, and if you set those up well enough, then those people will start to gravitate towards
Mm.
the thing you're talking about and the thing that you're doing and the services you're providing or the products you're putting out. But it is a challenge. You know, I think for some people, it really is very clear almost instantly who that person is. And I think for some, like, I know for myself, when there's multiple options, it gets hard.
Mm-hmm.
It gets difficult. And especially when you need things to work fairly quick, like you need that audience to kind of respond fairly quickly
Mm-hmm.
and start to be interested a little bit faster. Um, it feels a little bit more difficult to try and maybe slightly changing it to fit a different audience, because you may just like snap into something that's like, oh yeah,
Mm.
you know, this was it all along. And that's been me with, you know, do I go for, you know, I have a real passion and a real affinity for the everyday gym goer. I really
Mm-hmm.
want them to do well, and I think I have a lot to still offer the everyday gym goer. And so there's that component. But there's also the audience of, well, I've also spent most of my career, a lot of my career, also in the education space for personal trainers. Like, I've taught trainers anatomy and program design and higher level concepts of nutrition. And like, I've done that as well. And I've
Mm.
spent a lot of my career mentoring coaches in that way, in different forms. And so there's also that audience, right? And those are separate people, right? Like that content diverts.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of like, I've just been stuck kind of in the middle of that, right? And then the reality is, like, you got to make a choice
Sure.
to
Yeah, and I
some
mean
degree. But
it's some on a different sort of train, but similar topic is that so I've got, say, for example, my lazy marketing stuff, which is courses, newsletter, mentorship. But then I also have a completely separate company, which is AI tools
right,
for content creators. And because I basically promote everything through my one main Instagram profile and one email list, then it's about, okay, well, there is crossover of all these things, but also like the message of the AI business is you prompt the AI and it spits you out an answer to content creation. Whereas the other business is saying, okay, well, we need to think more about strategy and thinking about all this stuff behind the scenes. So in one way, they don't necessarily conflict, but there is this kind of like, well, one maybe appeals to someone who wants a little bit of a quick fix. Like, okay, just tap that in and then just chuck that out on social media. Whereas actually, like, you actually need this other stuff as well as that other thing if you're really gonna actually make this work. So sometimes I have like a little bit of a um I wrestle with, okay, how do I make these things coexist without kind of like stealing or, blurring the lines about what you actually need and stuff like that. So I think whether it's that or whether it's the way that, you want to approach your offers, your content and things like that. And is it PTs? Is it Gen Pop? I think we're all wrestling with something within our business at any given time to say like, I mean, I imagine Mr. like Hormozy. I mean, I don't really follow him these days, but Mr. Hormozy, I imagine, is probably still flavor of the month, right? I bet he's
yeah,
struggling, wrestling with various different problems about how he expands his business, right? He's not worried about paying the bills, but he's still wrestling with something. There'll be things in his business
yeah,
that aren't quite clicking and aren't quite working the way he wants them to work. So he's figuring that stuff out. And I think whether you're just like starting out this very early stage, or you're right earning, you know, 9 figures a year or whatever, is people are all we're all still trying to solve some sort of problem in our business. No one's got it absolutely nailed on, and there's zero problem. So whatever problem someone has, it's like we're all going through something similar. Anyway.
Yeah. To think that it's not going to exist, I think is an important concept. You know, and I think there's a big part of it's the sort of, it's the same thing with fitness, right? Like you don't win fitness. You just learn how to keep doing it more efficiently and effectively in your own life. And you learn which levers are more advantageous to pull at certain times, depending on kind of what's going on in your life. That's, you know, that's how we teach other people how to manage their fitness.
Yeah.
Right. But you never win. And you ultimately never win business either. I mean, I guess you win by selling, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Okay. But then you're also met with like, well, if you likely built a company that was good enough to sell to someone, you probably have something inside of you that needs something to do, problems to solve, right? So you're going to create more problems to solve. You're going to create something new in some way, right? And so I think understanding, like, I think in my head, even you know, as professional things shifted for me recently, there was this period of time where I was just like, I thought I was done with this stuff. Like I was kind of bummed that I had to like go back to the drawing board. But and I just had to re-accept the drawing board phase. And because I actually don't despise the phase. It's just that there's certain aspects of the phase that I'm in currently that I don't like necessarily, right? But I learned that it's not actually the drawing board phase that I don't like. It's just some of the things that come along with that. But it's re-accepting the fact that like, oh, these problems are never going away. And how you've always solved these problems is realizing that you're always going to be solving the problems and that you always have to show up to be solving those problems. So I think the perspective you approach it with is important.
Totally agree. Cool. So I think we've been going for almost 2 hours. So I think
it's been a good one.
It's been good. Yeah. I think obviously it's always nice to chat to you anyway. To have that be valuable for listeners as well, I think is, you know, it's unique for, I think, a lot of people to hear a lot about what actually goes behind the scenes beyond, this is how I make a reel or whatever. What actually happens. And I think giving people some sense of comfort, maybe the wrong word, but we're all in the same boat. We're all figuring shit out as we go, right? No one's got it all mapped out regardless of what level you're at. So appreciate you coming on. And obviously we've talked about clarity of offers, what you do. So probably wrap up by saying, what is it you're doing right now? And where can people find out more? Where should they go? Give us the end summary, if you will.
Yeah. So, I mean, where you could, I hang out on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram. It's a good place to find me, to learn a little bit more about what I'm attempting to start to do. But offers are still being worked out in a large way. You know, and so I coach clients one-on-one. That spans from gym goers to coaches and personal trainers. I've been trying to come up with more of an offer around blending that coaching and mentorship offer. And I know you and I kind of talked about that a while back, but I'm circling back to trying to get that more of a foothold. So I think one big glaring gap that I see is, and what I've experienced in my life, and I think we all have as trainers at some point, is you got into this because you were in love with it and you were obsessed with it, and you were on top of it yourself and you were seeing results, and then you wanted to learn more about it. And then you started to build a business and have clients around that and build a life around that. And along the way, your bandwidth is so taken up that now the things that got you in it are now the things that are insufficiencies within the system itself, which is you, right? And your health and your ability to show up for yourself and, be engaged within the process that kind of got you into this to begin with. And that's kind of the coaching aspect of the coaching and mentorship of trainers and other coaches is, I want to be there as a coach for you and to get you back excited about the thing that once excited you, and figuring out what that is. It doesn't have to be a 5-day push-pull legs where you do 20 minutes of low intensity cardio, steady state every morning fasted. Like it's okay. Like what's your life right now? Is it 3 days per week? And then we're incorporating trail running and some yoga. And like, it's really trying to get coaches in a better headspace for their own health. So they're no longer kind of a bottleneck in that, in their own business in that way. Cause also like I really, and I also don't know if this is the question you asked, but this is where I'm going with it. So here we are. I'm also just trying to flesh out. This is the offer I'm kind of currently running with and seeing if it sticks and trying to flesh out and refine. So hopefully that's helpful to kind of hear it fleshed out for people. But there's also that component of throughout my career, the best way to learn from a coach that you look up to is to hire them. Like be a client of theirs. Because it's front row seats to how they program, what their intakes look like, what their questionnaires look like, what their daily communication or their daily or weekly communication is with their clients. How do they deliver that service? And are there components of that you could then take and put in your own service and company and ways that you operate and speak to your clients and whatever else? Which I think is very valuable. And I've learned a lot from other coaches in that regard. So I think being there for that, I want to be that for someone, a younger coach or a coach who's maybe a little earlier on or just looking to learn. And then the mentorship part is trying to add that one component that I think is missed for myself as I've been a personal trainer and a coach and progressed my career. It's like, yeah, like getting into shape, like this is a part of what I need and want. But also like, I feel like there's not much other time to ask you other questions. Like, I don't feel like I get an hour just to sit down with you once a month and just kind of like shoot, talk shop and like ask you some questions and like, hey, I'm dealing with this client thing. And like, I'm trying to do this and it's just not responding. And, what's your experience with that? And so adding on a component of mentorship to it that kind of blends both worlds is kind of the offer that I'm currently trying to flesh out. Because I know there's mainly trainers that listen to this. So
for sure.
That's
cool.
That's
and
kind of what I'm doing.
So it's Austin Current _, right? I remember right.
Yeah. So yeah, find me on Instagram. It's Austin Current _. I'm a guy with I got a big red beard, so it's red in certain light, I guess, but it looks more red in my Instagram photo. So I got a big beard. You're in the right spot.
There you go. Cool, man. Appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll have you back on sometime in the near future. And appreciate your time. Speak to you soon.
Speak to you too, man.